Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to my channel. It is Finished Ministries. My name is Ursulon Cockrell. I'm doing another study on the little horn, specifically looking at 3 horns being uprooted and this little horn again. And I want to just take a step back and focus because I'm going to present some material that on first glance you might be like, well, I don't know. So I want to step back and look at the broader context and what we have here. In Daniel chapter 7, we have the 4 beasts, then we have these 10 horns and the little horn. Then we get a picture of Jesus coming to the Ancient of Days there, and we have this picture of judgment taking place, right? And then the little horn is destroyed, his body given to the burning flame, and the kingdom is given over to the saints. What do we see in Daniel chapter 8? We see reminiscent a picture of the same thing. We see some of the same kingdoms. We see the Medes, the Persians, the Greece. We see this little horn emerging. Then we see the imagery of a sanctuary being cast down. And we've actually find out that Gabriel goes to Daniel in chapter 9 to give him understanding of what he just saw in chapter 8. In chapter 9, we see more imagery of the sanctuary, Jerusalem being trodden down and being cast down. And so what we're seeing here in Daniel chapter 7, chapter 8, and chapter 9 are really a recapitulation of events that are describing more or less the same thing. And chapter 8 and chapter 9 really draw on the imagery of the judgment, the casting down of the sanctuary, and of this people, the little horn, I would even argue. We see in Daniel chapter 7 the transference of that kingdom to another kingdom. And so really this idea of the little horn being burned in the fire, we see this extensively in the New Testament, but it's actually being applied to Old Covenant Israel, as I've already pointed out in numerous previous videos. But I want to take a pause and really look at some of the verses from the New Testament that talk about Old Covenant Israel being burned with fire. Specifically, if we go to John 15. Jesus speaks about the branches that are burned in the fire. 15. And if we go to verse 5, he says, I am the vine, you are the branches. He that abides in me and I in him, the same brings forth much fruit. For without me you can do nothing. If a man abide in me, he is cast forth as a branch. If a man abide not in me, he is cast forth as a branch and is withered. And men gather them and cast them into the fire, and they are burned. So here we see imagery of what the little horn experience is, being thrown into the burning flame. Again, who are the branches here? Romans 11 tells us that they were Old Covenant Israel, who were cast forth into the fire. We see this same picture in Isaiah 27. Again, the taking of these branches and burning them. And we also see within this chapter, and I want to point this out because it's incredibly significant. In verse 9, the connection to the being thrown into the fire and burned is the destruction of the temple. He says in verse 9, by this therefore shall the iniquity of Jacob be purged. This is all the fruit to take away his sin. When he makes all the stones of the altar as chalk stones that are beaten asunder, the groves and the images shall not stand up. And I'm just going to jump down in verse 10. He says, the fenced city shall be desolate, habitation forsaken, left like a wilderness. There shall the calf feed, there shall he lie down, and consume the branches thereof, when the branches thereof are withered, and shall be broken off. The women come, set them on fire, for it is a people of no understanding. And so here we see again this imagery of the branches being broken off and burned in the fire. Along with that, don't miss this, is that the altar, the stones of the altar would be beaten as chalk stones, beaten asunder. And so we can't miss the connection of the burning of the branches, the people, with the destruction of the temple. In Matthew chapter 13, Jesus speaks about the tares being gathered and burned in the fire. Down in verse 40, he says, as therefore the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so shall it be in the end of the world. That's the word age. So shall it be in the end of the age. That is, the end of the old covenant age would bring about the tares being gathered and burned in the fire. And the point we're going to get to in Zechariah 11 will really hammer this home. The ending of that old covenant age resulted in a destruction of the temple, a burning of the temple, a burning of those tares, and I would argue even a burning of the little horn. If we go to Matthew chapter 22, we see the same picture of this burning. Jesus here telling a parable, speaking about the destruction of the old covenant people. He says, when the king heard thereof, he was wroth. He sent forth his armies, destroyed those murders, and burned up their city. And so we, all throughout the New Testament, we have this imagery of old covenant Israel being thrown to the burning flame, which is exactly what we see with the little horn. In Lamentations, again, this is an Old Testament verse, but it's significance in that which was is a thing with shall be. This was the type pointing forward to the antitype, the destruction of Jerusalem. In verse 3, speaking about the destruction of Jerusalem by Babylon, he has cut off in his fierce anger all the horn of Israel. He had drawn back his right hand from before the enemy. And he burned against Jacob like a flaming fire, which devoured round about. So we have several significant things here. One, the cutting off of the horn of Israel. That's significant as we talk about Daniel 7. The burning against Jacob, the flaming fire which devoured round about. And so we see in this imagery, right, the cutting off of the horn of Israel and being thrown to the flame, the burning flame. So we can't miss that. Or again, Revelation 18, speaking about the destruction of Babylon and this woman. In verse 8, therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine. She shall be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judgeth her. If you haven't seen my video on who this Babylon is, Mystery Babylon Unmasked, go back and watch that, because I show conclusively that it is Old Covenant Israel, the city where the Lord was slain, Jerusalem. So here we see that this woman will be utterly burned with fire. The same picture we have in Daniel chapter 7. And so what I want to take us to is Zechariah chapter 11, because we're going to see something very profound here. In this chapter, I believe it does follow Daniel chapter 7. And I spent a lot of time drawing on that backstory to before we get here. Verse 1 opens up with the burning of the cedar and they come from Lebanon. Open your doors, O Lebanon, that the fire may devour your cedars. Howl, fir tree, for the cedar is fallen, because the mighty are spoiled. Howl, O ye oaks of Bashan, for the forest of the vintage is come down. If we jump over to 1 Kings chapter 5, we're going to see that the temple itself was made of cedars from Lebanon. Down in verse 6. Here is Solomon making a deal with King Hiram. He says here, behold, I purpose to build a house to the Lord my God, and as the Lord spake unto David my father, saying, thy son, whom I set upon my throne in thy room, he shall build a house unto my name. Now if we jump down to verse 6, now therefore command that they hew me cedar trees out of Lebanon, and my servants shall be with your servants, and unto them will I give hire for the servants according to all that you appoint. Okay, I'm going to jump down to verse 10 for lack of time. So Hiram gave Solomon cedar trees and fir trees according to all his desire. And so here we see the cedar trees, the fir trees being used for the temple, for the building of that temple. So if we go back to Zechariah 11, that's the context in which we're seeing. Open your doors, O Lebanon, that the fire may devour your cedars. Again, pointing forward to this destruction in 70 AD, we're going to see in this same chapter, this is when God would end his covenant with Old Covenant Israel. It says in verse 3, there is a voice of howling for the shepherds, for their glory is spoiled, a voice of the roaring of young lions, for the pride of Jordan is spoiled. I believe it's in Ezekiel, I've drawn a blank on the verse, but the young lions here refer to Israel, Old Covenant Israel. Verse 4, thus saith the Lord my God, feed the flock of the slaughter. So here's the flock being prepared for slaughter, whose possessors slay them and hold themselves not guilty. And they that sell them say, blessed be the Lord, for I am rich, and their own shepherds pity them not. For I will no more pity the inhabitants of the land, saith the Lord, but lo, I will deliver the men every one into his neighbor's hand, and into the hand of his king. They shall smite the land out of their hand. I will not deliver them. And so we're seeing all this imagery here of 70 AD and the apostasy that went on within Old Covenant Israel, and God giving them up into their neighbor's hand, into the king's hands of the nations. Verse 7, I will feed the flock of slaughter, even you, O poor of the flock. And here we see, I took unto me 2 staves, the one I called beauty, the other I called bands, and I fed the flock. Now notice here, because don't forget the context, right? The context is the temple being burned up, the cedar from Lebanon and the fir trees, right? And we're seeing we're going to see in a second the breaking of the covenant with Israel and Judah. And now, within the same context, notice what happens. Verse 8, 3 shepherds also I cut off in 1 month. My soul loathed them, and their soul abhorred me. If you go back to Daniel chapter 7, we see that 3 horns are uprooted. I would propose that these are the 3 shepherds here that are being cut off. Now remember, in Daniel chapter 2, it is God who sets up kings and removes kings. So here we see the Lord removing 3 of those shepherds, cutting them off, which we would expect in Daniel chapter 7. He would raise up the little horn. He would be the one to cut off the 3 horns. It's God who is doing the removing and doing the setting up. So don't forget that. In verse 9, then said I will not feed you. Let that dieth, let it die. And that is to be cut off, let it be cut off. And let the rest eat every one the flesh of another. And so we see actually in Deuteronomy chapter 28, we see this, that part of the covenantal curses that would come upon Israel is that they would eat their own flesh. And we see that in the Jewish-Roman War from 66 to 70 AD. The siege was so bad, the people inside were eating their own flesh. And we see within the city, numerous zealots had risen up and taken control of the city, and it was chaos inside the city. We really don't truly understand just how bad this siege was. Now we see the cutting off of the old covenant. And I took my staff, even beauty, and I cut it asunder, that I might break my covenant which I had made with all the people. And it was broken in that day, and so the poor of the flock that waited upon me knew that it was the word of the Lord. And so here we see in the next verse, the 30 pieces that were paid for Jesus. I said unto them, if you think good, give me my price, and if not, forbear. So they weighed for me 30 pieces of silver. Verse 13, they cast it to the potter, which we know from the New Testament. Everyone's familiar with that. Verse 14, I cut asunder my other staff, even bands, that I might break the brotherhood between Judah and Israel. And so here we see within the 70 AD context, the temple being burned up, God completely severing that old covenant with Israel. The last thing that remained standing in that was essentially a cornerstone of that covenant was the temple. And so it had to be demolished and destroyed to finally let everyone know that God was formally done with old covenant Israel. Now notice what happens in verse 15 through 17. As 3 shepherds were cut off, another shepherd rises up. Verse 15, the Lord said unto me, take unto thee yet the instruments of a foolish shepherd. For lo, I will raise up a shepherd in the land, which shall not visit those that be cut off, neither shall seek the young one, nor heal that is broken, nor feed that stands still, but he shall eat the flesh of the fat, and tear their claws in pieces. Woe to the idle shepherd that leaves the flock. The sword shall be upon his arm, and upon his right eye. His arm shall be clean dried up, and his right eye shall be utterly darkened. So I hope you can see the significance in the context of what's taking place in Daniel chapter 7, and connecting it here with Zechariah 11. The casting down of the city and the sanctuary we see in Daniel chapter 8 and Daniel chapter 9, which is a recapitulation of Daniel chapter 7. This picture of judgment happening, the cutting off of this little horn and the giving of the kingdom to another nation, which go back and watch my previous video in this series. That points to the breaking of the covenant with Israel and the taking and giving that kingdom to the Gentile nation and the remnant of Israel. So within Zechariah 11, we see the 3 shepherds being cut off. We see another shepherd being raised up. a wicked, foolish shepherd, which is exactly what we see in Daniel, but it's presented in the context of horns. 3 horns are cut off. We have this little one that arises. The question is, who are the shepherds? If we go to Ezekiel 34, we're going to find out exactly who these shepherds are. Again, this is within the context of the Old Testament, but again, pointing forward, we see the same application in the New. The word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, prophesy against the shepherds of Israel. Prophesy, saying to them, Thus saith the Lord God unto the shepherds, Woe be to the shepherds of Israel that do feed themselves. Should not the shepherds feed the flock? You eat the fat, you clothe you with the wool. You kill them that are fed, but you feed not the flock. The disease have you not strengthened, neither have you healed that which was sick, neither have you bound up that which was broken, neither have you bought again that which was driven away, neither have you sought that which was lost, but with force and with cruelty have you ruled them. And they were scattered because there is no shepherd, and they became meat to all the beasts of the field when they were scattered. And so here we see exactly who these shepherds are. They are the shepherds of Israel. Again, what do those 10 horns and the little one represent? They represent Old Covenant Israel. Specifically, I believe, and I'm not gonna be dogmatic and say it's pointing to exactly one person, one shepherd, and I know who exactly it is. Let's look at the overall context and the overall themes here. Right? It's a picture of Old Covenant Israel and these false shepherds who, were not feeding the flock. They were not taking care of the flock. They were eating the fat. Right? And so that's what we see in Zechariah chapter 11, which I again, really believe is pointing to Daniel chapter 7. The little horn rising up, the 3 horns being cut off, the picture of judgment, the picture of the little horn being thrown into the burning flame, which is exactly what we see in Zechariah 11. The doors of Lebanon are open. The cedar, the fir trees are being burned up. That's the description of 70 AD, folks. In the kingdom, at that point, the old covenant would come to a formal close because the temple, the last thing standing and remaining of that old covenant, would be destroyed. The new covenant, which had already, I don't want someone to say it hadn't been fulfilled yet. It was already in the process of being fulfilled. Paul says in 2 Corinthians 3 that they were going from glory to glory, from old to new covenant. There was a process in place. It wasn't already happened, but not yet. It reached a final culmination fulfillment in 70 AD when God would cut off Old Covenant Israel and give that kingdom to the New Covenant people, the remnant of Israel and the Gentile nation. That is when we see the heavenly Jerusalem descending from heaven to the earth for his people. I hope you can see just how profound and how Bible-centered this message is, folks. There are so many people today claiming sola scriptura, claiming to stand on the Bible and the Bible alone. But yet, they want to search and dig through history to find the answers. I believe the Bible has these answers if we allow it to explain itself. Hope this message was a blessing. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thanks, and God bless.